Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we have with us Jamie Lieberman, who is a co-founder and partner of #Legal LLC. Welcome to the program, Jamie.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, so share with us a little bit about your background and what inspired you to become an entrepreneur, because you could have gone a lot of different paths. So why pick the entrepreneur pathway?
So I actually went the traditional route. I'm an attorney. My #Legal is a law firm. And when I graduated from law school, I went the traditional lawyer route, which is, as lawyers call, big law. And I went to work for a very large law firm in New York City. And I quickly realized that what I was missing most from my work was autonomy and a lot of client contact. Those were the two things I think that were most interesting and exciting to me and made me happiest in my job. So after I worked for a while and learned what I was going to learn, started understanding kind of what made me happy as an attorney, I realized that the entrepreneur route was probably a better way to go for me.
Yeah, that's neat to have those kind of realizations, because I think too many times you get to the point where it's like, I'm just too far in and I can't break away and it'd be too hard to start and, I don't know anything about. And I think that's when you can take that kind of step. Did you feel also an aspect of you're actually going to start building something for your own, because all the time and hours you put into someone else, that's paying their mortgage, so to speak.
Absolutely. That was definitely a part of it. I actually had gone back to law school about 5 years after I graduated from college. So starting something new was okay with me. I didn't have, I think, a lot of the fear that sometimes people have when they have been in something so long like you're talking about. So I felt a little bit less risk adverse because I had done it before and done it successfully, completely changing careers. So deciding to go out on my own, I met a wonderful business partner, which is also incredibly helpful to have somebody else who's kind of in the trenches with you.
Yeah, exactly. So, hey, tell us a little bit about what's the focus of #Legal, because I'm certain that there has to be an element of social media in there since we're talking about hashtag.
You are right. So we started the law firm with a focus on influencer marketing, which, as a lot of people now call it, back when I started working in this area, it was mostly bloggers. Now people who work in social media are called influencers. They're bloggers. There's people who have large kind of social media presences. And we started working solely with influencers, the agencies that work with those influencers, and brands that work with the agencies and influencers. And we realized that there was more of a market out there, not just for influencers, but for anybody who has an online business. So our specialty now, while we still work with a lot of influencers and have a unique knowledge about influencer marketing, is with all online businesses and the legal issues that face those businesses.
Yeah, so let's go a little bit deeper on influencers. How do you know if you are one, and how do you know if your business needs one? Because you do hear that a whole lot online and in social media. To take your business to the next level, connect with influencers. Well, there's probably two sides of the equation, right? So you're kind of in the middle, seeing it from both sides, I would suspect. So is there some influencer out there that goes, shoot, I have this and I do that and I can reach this. What's in it for me? What can I look for as an influencer to maybe align up with some opportunity?
Sure. So there is definitely a huge market. Influencer marketing every year gets bigger and bigger. And I think that there's a really great way to connect, for brands to connect with potential customers, working with influencers. But I think the most important thing to remember when a brand is making a decision to work with an influencer or a group of influencers is to make sure that that message will resonate with the influencer's audience. So if you're a brand who's looking to work with an influencer, you need to make sure that it's going to feel authentic. There's a lot of noise on the internet, as we all know. And so it's really important that when you're reaching out and you want to go work with an influencer or group of influencers looking to sort of find some new customers you may not be reaching, it just needs to make sure that whatever your brand is a really good fit for those readers. And really good influencers, the ones that are spending time working on this as a business, they know their audience. They know who they're reaching. They know who is listening to what they're saying. And so when you can connect with that right influencer, it can be extremely effective.
Yeah, I think it sounds cliche to say that, but then when you actually see it in real life, it just is amazing because you could say something about yourself or your product, but when someone else says it, like even in passing, haven't you ever, I know I have, my ears have perked up when someone I've heard on a podcast just kind of mentions, well, that tool that I use for the best for whatever is this. And so anyway, last week, and you're like, wait, I'm going to Google that. And you're like, they weren't even pitching that. They just mentioned it, and you find yourself drawn to it.
Well, I'm actually a perfect example of that. The majority of my business is word of mouth. And so most of my clients come to me as referrals from other clients or when they hear me on a show like yours. And so I am a great example of that because for particularly a service like mine, a legal service, you sort of want to know that if you're hiring a lawyer, you want to know that they have credibility, that they understand what they're talking about. And so when someone can say to you, hey, Jamie was my lawyer, she did a great job, that makes you feel instantly more comfortable. And so I'm sort of a little microcosm of that. It's pretty funny that I work in that, and also it happens to work for my business as well.
Yeah, except that you don't call it that. Influencer marketing is the 30,000-foot view, but it really kind of is like social proof. I know that a lot of people will talk about that. I touch on it in my book because there's so many marketing psychology things that are going on in our mind that make us even pay attention to anything, but much further than that, make a decision. So social proof really is word of mouth. Word of mouth, 2.0 is reviews, testimonials, is the experience, like all of that stuff. Now, you could say, yes, I, experience influencer marketing because people refer me word of mouth. All of that's kind of the same thing. And I think that's the trick there is having that happen naturally and organically without forcing, like a client to go tell people about me, because then it's like, okay, hey, Jamie's awesome, whatever.
Right. It's exactly right. And I think that the influencers that I've worked with who are really effective in working with brands, they just do this really wonderful job of talking about products that they actually use. And then frequently that will just make sense for them to have a relationship. And it just works out really, really well. And it's really valuable to the reader because the reader's actually getting real information, is understanding. They typically trust the influencer. They follow them on, say, Instagram, or they read their blog, or they follow them on Facebook. And so, the reader feels like they know the influencer because they're sharing so much about them. And so when that influencer says, hey, this product is amazing, and you say, oh, I completely trust that person, that influencer isn't going to enter into a contract, work with a brand that they don't actually believe in. And that's why it really works well.
So who initiates the first step in that kind of a relationship? Would the influencer wake up one day and go, shoot, I know I've got a gillion followers on whatever, and I know I use XYZ. Hey, Mr. Business manager agent, go out there and find me places where I can monetize this? Or is it some product that sees some influencer mention it just casually and then go, ooh, let's take this to the next level?
It's both. It really is. There's influencers will reach out to brands. Brands will reach out to influencers. Brands also work with marketing and PR agencies, and they frequently can be kind of a go-between because the marketing and PR agencies know a lot of the influencers. They know the ones that would be a great fit, and so they're really good as well. There's also influencer networks that specifically are groups of influencers, and they will frequently connect brands and influencers as well. So it's kind of anybody can initiate that conversation, and the deals happen in a multitude of ways.
So then what is your legal role in that? Are you a connector/broker, or are you the one that people come to say, party A needs this and party B is the influencer, so make it all legally happen in the right way?
So I'm typically what you said, the last thing that you said. I make sure that the contracts look good, depending on who I represent. I draft contracts for both influencers, for agencies, and for brands. And depending on who I'm working with will depend on, how I'm reading or viewing that contract. I also do, I will work with influencers when they have certain deals like that are maybe book deals, or if they're a TV show or things like that. So I do a lot of contract review. I have connected people in the past. That's not typically what my role is. It's just because I happen to know a lot of people and I like to connect people. So if I see something that looks great, I will just do that because I think that's a great way to help out my clients. Mm-hmm. But typically my role in these is the legal role, to make sure that, the intellectual property is all covered, to make sure that everybody's sort of following the laws, the FTC disclosures. I help with that a lot. Make sure that we have all of the right disclaimers. That's really where I come in.
And are you more on the legal side of the influencer or the other party, or does it go both ways?
I do both. It really depends on who's looking to work with me. Obviously, I can't represent both parties in a single transaction. Yeah. Right. No, I never do that. But depending on who I'm working with, I work with both, and I just will represent one side. Mm-hmm.
So then let's think about from a brand who wants to engage an influencer because they see they have a wonderful audience and they already use this product or service, or they be willing to, from the brand's perspective, what are some of the things to keep in mind and watch out for and make sure that you have covered to protect the brand?
So this actually goes sort of both ways. This will both protect the influencer and the brand, because a well-written contract will protect everybody. And that's really the goal. It shouldn't be adversarial. There's definitely negotiation, but there's a big difference between that and having something that's adversarial. And I never advocate for that in these situations. This is sort of a win-win for everybody. But some of the most common provisions that both parties need to look out for when looking at a contract. A big one is intellectual property, who's actually going to own the work. And it really depends. Sometimes the brand wants to have final ownership, which means they own the copyright for all the work. And sometimes the influencer wants to keep the ownership of the copyright, but will license that over to the brand. And so depending on what is done will also depend on how much it costs, because to purchase a work and own the copyright is typically more expensive than if you're just licensing a work. Mm-hmm. Another thing that a lot of contracts we have to watch out for and make sure that is put in there is exclusivity provisions. A lot of times brands don't want you working with their competitors at the same time that, say, an influencer is working with a brand. So you have to make sure that there's good exclusivity provisions in there. There's also, making sure that deliverables and the timeline are clearly laid out. So the influencer knows exactly what the brand expects and when the deadline is. And also, finally, payment. That's another really big one. Payment terms. All brands pay differently. Sometimes it's net 30, net 60. Just knowing what the actual payment terms are is incredibly important. So those are a lot of things that we look at when we read contracts.
So then what are some of the typical mistakes that you're finding, maybe just a small business owner, just in general, kind of moving away from influencer and marketing that way, but when a small business will come to you, what are some of the common legal mistakes that you're seeing?
I typically see sometimes someone starting a small business but not forming a corporate entity. I think it's really important, if you're starting a small business and you have an intent on making money from that business, to protect your personal assets. It's really important to just form that legal entity. And so I see a lot of people who start businesses don't kind of do that and then come to me later saying, oh, I'm so nervous, my business took off and I don't have an LLC or a corporation, whatever. It's obviously very personal to each individual circumstances, but that's a big one I see. Back to contracts, not having contracts is a big one. A lot of people do things over email, over phone, and you miss a lot of the provisions that you need. So I highly recommend that if you're entering into deals with another individual, with another company, that you have a good contract. It doesn't need to be 15 pages long and very complicated, but you need to have something signed in writing that's not just an email and includes other provisions that, say, an email wouldn't include. Not protecting your intellectual property. People choose names and they don't check to make sure that, say, that name is trademarked by someone or being used by someone else. That's kind of another common mistake that I see.
Yeah, so I'm sure we could probably list 38 more, but those are some common ones. When you get an inquiry, phone call, email, whatnot, or even in person, what are some of the questions you get from people that are not a client but are thinking about, legal first? Well, here's a question I have. What are some of the most common questions that you see that way? Not necessarily, mistakes, but just what are some of the preliminary questions that you see small business owners asking?
Small business owners, the first question I always get is, should I form an LLC? That is without a doubt the most common question that I get, is people sort of not knowing when they should form a corporate entity and then what corporate entity they should form. That's a really big one. And then people also will email me or call me and they'll want to ask me about intellectual property. They may not understand copyrights. They may not understand trademark. And so sometimes they just kind of want me to give them a short overview of that, what they need to be looking out for. I do work with a lot of influencers and brands, and so I get a frequent question, or even small business owners who have websites. And I'll get a question, can I use somebody else's content? That's a really big question that I frequently get if I give them credit. And so I do get those questions. I also get a lot of questions about site terms. A lot of people don't realize that when you run a website, and if you're collecting any personal information from people, say you have a mailing list and you're collecting a name and email address, you need to have a privacy policy on your website. So a lot of people sort of don't even know where to start with that. It feels very overwhelming to have site terms. So I do get a lot of questions about that. And we offer strategy sessions where you can book a half an hour with me and I will sort of walk through your business. It's almost like a little audit. And I can say to you, hey, I can help you in this area. We could make your business a little stronger in this area. And so those are a lot of the frequent questions I see during those strategy sessions.
Yeah, that's a neat service. I think that's super valuable, kind of like a little mini audit and, what should I do? And I'm a big proponent of thinking and looking at frequently asked questions as well as the kind of going deeper part, which is the should ask question. So what are a couple questions that business owners should ask you from a legal perspective, but they don't even think to ask them because they're still stuck on the frequently asked questions? So let's go a little bit deeper, and what are some considerations that business owners should be asking to consider?
I think business owners, when thinking about their business and their business plan, one of the questions that I don't frequently get is, how often should I be working with a lawyer? People don't even know when to contact a lawyer. They sort of have that reactionary, somebody sent me a contract, I don't know what to do about it, or I'm being threatened with being sued, what do I do? And so for me, I think finding a good lawyer, having one that you can get in touch with before, being proactive versus reactive, I think is one of those things that a lot of people just don't do with lawyers. They sort of wait. So when a small business owner is starting, I'd say do that small audit if you've never started a business before, even if you're a seasoned business owner. It never hurts to sit down with a lawyer and just say, hey, here's my business. This is some of the processes I have in place. What can I do to make them better? Where do you see my vulnerabilities? It really ends up making you money versus costing you money.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I just think that we've just like scratched the surface. Of course, we could go through 5, 6, 7 more should ask or frequently asked questions, but I really want to zero in on that kind of half-hour deep dive session that you do or offer. So what is the best way that people can reach out and learn more about #legal, connect with you, maybe get some questions answered, and see if you may be a good fit for them?
Sure. So you can go to our website, which is #legal.com, or you can send me an email, which is Jamie, Jamie, at #legal.com. Those are definitely your best two ways to find us.
Well, Jamie, it's so good getting to know you. Thank you for taking time out of your day to speak with us today.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.